Dear colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the LGMA webinars towards COP28. This is the June edition. My name is Yunus Serkan, Director of Global Advocacy at ICLE, Local Governments for Sustainability. ICLE is delivering this presentation and webinars in its capacity as the focal point of the LGMA constituency to the UNFCCC. We will allow a couple of seconds for all colleagues to settle down so that we can kick off our webinar. Um, those who have been with us, you're familiar that this is a recorded session. This is an information for those coming new. It's later on uploaded on our web channels and shared publicly. We usually take through the presentation. Sometimes we have guests, and at the end of this first 40 minutes, then we open the floor for Q&A and contributions. But when there are burning issues, we also respond them in the meantime. While we are waiting, today's agenda is relatively similar to the previous session. So we start with an introduction, a calendar, updates, priority topics, which is this time stocktake and COP28 scenario. One information about Deborah Roberts running for the IPCC chair position. And we'll also hear from our colleagues from Biodiversity Center. On the COP28 scenario, I will also invite our colleague Eloise from Regions 4 to share about their effort together with Committee of the Regions of Europe and under two coalition for positioning about COP28 so that it's also as an input to this efforts, and then we'll also, of course, connect this to the discussion on COP28 scenario. Hello, I think it would be good if I finish the session on COP28, then I can invite you to intervene so that it finds its right moment for discussions. So yes, let's proceed without further ado. And another abbreviation, LGMA. I know it's not easy to track, but this is one of the oldest abbreviations, Local Governments and Municipal Authorities Constituency. This was delivered in 95, and we are one of the oldest in this space. But as of today, we are representing ourselves as the voice of subnationals, which means cities, towns, regions, into the UNFCCC process, to the negotiations, action agenda, dialogue with the presidencies, and with the national governments who are supporting the concept of multi-level action. Over these years, we have a track record of our achievements. And if you have noticed, until 2007, we were relatively silent. This was the year when the UNFCCC process kicked off a new regime design. And there we were saying that it is time to include local and regional governments. That was the kick of our roadmap. This ended up, its first results in Paris Agreement, where all levels of governments are recognized. And of course, the rest is to engage and empower all these efforts. And the second milestone was in COP26 with multi-level as an element in the preamble of the Glasgow Climate Pact. And based on the COP27 achievements, we are now in the second generation of NDCs together with Global Stocktake. That's why we are committed that multi-level action delivers will be our motto, and it will show results. We have several engagement tools. Webinars are one way of connecting to us. We have our bulletins since the beginning of this year. You can reach to our archives, both the presentation and the bulletins. And we also have a WhatsApp group. Those for the LGMA constituency who are involved that they can also connect themselves. Earlier this year, especially in our logic that we have to be more focused and specific on our inputs to the UNFCCC processes, we have started to create our working groups, adaptation led by Committee of the Regions and Regions 4, finance led by FMDV and ICLE, and loss and damage finance led by C40, UCLG, and Scottish Government. And others may come up on the way as much as we feel the need and the urgency for that. Towards COP28, based on what we have achieved in Sharm el-Sheikh, we have announced our priorities as operationalization of search as a delivery mechanism, and we have made some significant progress. We will hear now in the UN Habitat Assembly, especially, and the UNFCCC. Then we will focus on stock take this year as the biggest topic of the discussion. And as we discussed, we will enhance our engagement in the UNFCCC process, and we will make sure the multi-level action pavilion is demonstrating the result of our year-round engagement, not just only the goal itself as the way we are engaging, but rather use this as culmination of our efforts. We are using this chart in order to remind ourselves that this is in fact a cyclic process. The countries who lead the process during the hosting the COP are, of course, gradually transferring their uh, capacities and authorities to the incoming presidencies, and we have seen this as well, the same in this year as well. Egyptian presidency, who made a fantastic achievement, not just in Sharm el Sheikh, but especially in Nairobi at the UN Habitat Assembly, are regularly now, let's say, phasing down their capacities. We are aware many of our partners like Ambassador Ayman and Ahmed and Amr, they are now assigned for new posts. This means that the capacity of the Egyptian president is getting much more shrinking. At the same time, the Egyptian COP28 president is increasing with visibility, with leadership, with mechanisms. And we have seen this especially in the climate talks here in Bonn. It was exactly that all the champions, climate champion, action champion, youth champion, president designate, were in present and having consultations. The supporting staff were there. I think that was one of the powerful demonstrations that they are serious in the leadership, and they are doing their efforts to make sure that we can be much better prepared. And we will discuss this, especially with the message from Razan Al Mubarak and other discussions throughout the year that we had shared in the Grand Climate Talks in Bonn over the past couple of weeks. What we have mapped our engagement that it is not only the UNFCCC agenda. We are following UN and UNFCCC agenda. That's why we are following UN Habitat and high-level political forum. We have this global and national agendas coming up. These are the ones that do not necessarily bound themselves with the UN procedures. It has its benefits, pros and cons, like G7, G20. And we have our own LGMA initiatives, LGMA processes. Those networks defining their own agendas, their own mechanisms, and that this is the power we are bringing, so that we are not relying on our partners, but we shape the agenda, we define the agenda together collectively and co-create the process. If we look at the last, uh, let's say, the last couple of weeks, as expected, June would be particularly very busy for us, because at the same time we had the UN Habitat Assembly in Nairobi every 4 years. This time it overlapped with the first week of the UN climate discussions, and we will touch upon both of those outcomes soon. In this month, we have seen a major initiative of French President Macron in collaboration with Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley, that shaped a big to a big extent the agenda outside the UNFCCC process. And on the LGMA side, we definitely have been engaged during the UNFCCC talks here in Bonn, daring cities, but also afterwards MedCop in Tangier, which was happening for the first time since 2016, which again gives the leadership to our partners like Moroccan government, who have been one of recognized as the most ambitious in terms of their ambition level, but also one of the most advanced on multi-level action. And offering this mobilization to MedCop is fantastically timely after COP28, of course, was African COP, COP27 African COP, but also equal as an Mediterranean COP. So it was good to see the outcomes, and we have already announced our stocktake process there. Brussels Urban Summit was also an important opportunity for the European networks, in particular in relation with the European Union. And London Climate Week was one of those, again, LGMA-driven processes. It is still continuing. It started already on Monday, but I think it's also very relevant to demonstrate how locally driven agendas can shape the process, and that's also definitely connected to our stocktake discussions as well. Let's continue. Yes, urbanization ministers met 4 years later in Nairobi. The first one was again in Nairobi. It was the first time they met, but now it's becoming now much more institutionalized. Ahead of this talk, they already have their executive board meetings, and we as ICLE and our capacity as LGMA Focal Point have participated virtually, especially welcoming the board decision to convene ministerial on urbanization climate at COP. Um, but this was the large this community coming together, and this has been a process which doesn't always focus on climate change, especially UN Habitat strategy has included climate as one of their four pillars, so it's relatively a new topic or new theme in their process. And definitely this resolution shows how seriously this is taken up. This was a convergence or merging of two separate processes, one driven by Pakistan, the other one by Egypt in its capacity as COP27 presidency, and as well as African states. But also Egypt is also hosting the next COP World Urban Forum 12 in Cairo next year. So it's definitely a fantastic sequence of leadership, and it's the good news that it's also now taken up this. The title here says submission, but it is adopted as it is without any brackets. That all 190 plus nations of UN Habitat has worked on it. So this resolution has a preamble, as all of them has such introductory paragraphs. In there's top text, there is a clear recognition of the ministerial meeting, and taking note of the surge initiative as an important element in this space. And let's remember, so many initiatives were coming up from COP27, but Surge was the one where UN Habitat was titled as the counterpart, and ICLE was supporting this as LGMA focal point. So having urban ministers recognize this is an important achievement. And there are 8 paragraphs of this text, and it's particular key highlights, keywords for us, especially. First of all, the United Assembly is encouraging executive director to continue such meetings of ministerials at COP. This is important because this gives the legitimacy to continue to have a similar meeting at COP 28. And it also encourages us to be actively involved in all the COP28, COP27 ministerial meeting. LGMS was prominently recognized as a supporting partner. Surge initiative is recommended by the UN Habitat Assembly that it should be working hand in hand with the executive board, which is the national governments, taking an executive role in this process, and that they should be active involved. This is exactly what we have been also suggesting, especially knowing that in the surge we are not talking about local regional governments on their own. We have co-chair role for each of the 5 thematic pathways, or let's say thematic work streams, and other elements, so that it is a multi-level collaboration, which is truly demonstrating the Paris Glasgow sequence. And in that sense, we are very happy that board will be more active involved in this process. And of course, this last paragraph is particularly important. Most likely, many of the urban ministers are not at all yet involved in the NDCs, but because this is led by the UN, the ministers of climate. But this paragraph gives them the motivation and encouragement and legitimacy that for multi-level climate action plans, the urban ministers, but local and regional governments, as well as together with the urban ministers, should also be involved. This is a powerful message that is coming from the habitat and urbanization ministers. During this 1 week, there were numerous consultations. Our colleagues at UN Habitat have convened in side events like ICLEs, and of course, there were several local and regional government events as well. In Bonn, as a bird's eye view, it was an opportunity for us to deliver our statements in the opening and the closing. Particularly, we have addressed the achievements since Sharm el-Sheikh COP27, such as G7, subnational G7 roundtable on subnational climate action with Urban 7, or Denver City Summit, and informed the UNFCCC community that something is coming from Nairobi, the urbanization ministers, and we celebrated at the end of the closing plenary. There was a good discussion on non-market approaches to position urbanization as a non-market approach is advancing. We are progressing on that. At the youth stock take, which is an innovation that COP28 presidency is introducing, ICTA and LGMA were the only non-youth constituency, particularly sharing our offer for engaging local level youth in the local level decision making and connecting to the stock takes. In fact, a couple of days later, we announced that Yungo constituency will also work with the LGMA and the stocktake process. Um, Sharm el Sheikh was a turning point for adaptation agenda because in the climate action agenda, particular emphasis was to the mitigation due to the legacy from the pre-Paris process, and there was a call to bring adaptation to the position to the discussion, equal footing. So Sharm el Sheikh adaptation agenda, we will correct this typo here. It's definitely not shark, but Sharm. And it will be now possible that adaptation and mitigation will both be a part of the climate action agenda with cross-cutting issues like finance. And we are very happy Human Settlements Task Force is created under this process. Global Stocktake, we will go through it. We were active in all levels. We had convened the LGMA Leaders Dialogue with UNFCCC Friends of Multi-Level Action. We will come to that. Several side events, ICLE, UN Habitat, UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub was held. Throughout the presence of the presidency's teams, we were actively involved in dialogues with them at the city hall, at inside the UNFCCC rooms. So that was literally giving us the opportunity to mature to offer that we are making progress on the partnership that COP28 presidency and Bloomberg has announced in March, and the consultations on the way forward to the strategy of the presidency for a more robust outcomes. And I think the statement from high-level champion is particularly important. We will touch upon this now. And as you remember, in the past, especially over these years towards Paris, we were always using this presence of City of Bonn and ICLE having residencies, congresses was an opportunity. Since 2022, we turned it into a daring cities notion, saying not just resilience, but also addressing climate emergency is the main theme. Due to COVID, we were not able to make this interaction in person. So it's the first time under the Daring Cities 2023, we made this possible, and it proved to be successful, especially local leaders and regional leaders and technical experts discussing climate emergency inside and outside UNFCCC. That was really an important agenda. It also connects to the fact that it's not anymore end of the COPs that we have to wait for results, but especially during this intersessionals, we will make use that there is also results coming out of this discussion so that we can be better prepared for the year round. There were several roundtables, plenaries, world cafes, and poster sessions, and in all of them, LGMA network was prominently active. We have delivered our statements. We will share the links that they have been delivering. These are all available also on the web, but it shows how we seriously take this issue, and in particular, the notion that this process should continue was really prominently resonated. Everybody's looking forward to our feedbacks, and we will have update on that shortly. This was the message from high-level champion Razan Al-Mubarak to the LGMA Leaders Dialogue with UNFCCC Friends of Multi-Level Action. It is a bit longer statement, but I would like to highlight a couple of points. First of all, it explicitly refers to COP28 outcomes. And in fact, obviously, this was one of the biggest missing elements. It was in Sharm el Sheikh, we were only focused on the surge and we could not feed too much into the process. So this expectation that multi-level action-related deliverables should be among the COP28 outcomes, including decisions, partnerships, is very, very exciting. The expectation to have a multi-level action coalition and that this should be together with parties to feed this to the new generation of NDCs is a concrete expectation from 28th presidency. And we will be working along these lines in the next couple of weeks. And they are eager to hear how we will discuss at the local level, and we will show this again, how are we preparing for that. So in overall, I think the COP28 is now perfectly complementing, and there is already more reasons to be more effectively expecting results because of the UN Habitat Assembly outcomes. but also this vision from the beginning that presidency wants multi-level action and urbanization a core element of the legacy from uh, Dubai. That's really encouraging. A couple of minutes for stock take discussion because we have some updates. But first one is that um, we started this with the Earth Day. That was the logic of this citizen bottom-up led initiatives. And since then, we have been working on our modalities. But at this UN climate conference, we also are delighted to receive the support from YUNGO constituency, the youth network, thousands of youth across the world. They are continuing to advance to the Dubai for through their local conference of youth, local LCO as they call it. So our idea is that the local and regional stock takes and local conference of youth will talk to each other, will get some synergies with each other in design and also participation, so that it is really reaching to this goal that local stock takes are really the points where communities at large can connect to the local and regional governments. So we are very happy. Um, we have clarified our poster session, which summarizes both quantified and process-wise progress since Paris. And we also added our modality for stock take at the local level. You can here see the English, French, and Arabic version, especially when we were at COP28. This was helpful. These are numbers we remember from the previous sessions, but once again, this doesn't mean that everything is done. And this also doesn't mean that nothing has done so far. Since Paris, we know that the mindset and landscape has changed a lot. And with Glasgow multi-level embedded, this gives us the confidence that the second generation or the next generation of NDCs, which will come from towards COP30, Brazil or onwards. So Dubai will be a stock take, but the NDCs will be developed in the run-up or in the follow-up of Dubai. So that the current evolution of engagement of local and regional governments and their commitments becomes much more officially in the process at the national and global level. That is our goal. This example of our 60 plus countries who have worked local and regional governments since Paris to advance their NDCs was good, but in the next round, in the second generation of NDCs, we would like to count those who have not done this, so that it is literally a mainstream that every nation by default makes a local and regional government engagement as the way forward for delivery of their commitments and climate neutrality, climate emergency response. The same goes to ourselves, that those commitments has to be delivered and there's gaps, and we have to be tracking this transparently, and we have to make sure we are receiving the right institutional and financial support at all levels. So again, this is a tracking. I mean, we will not go through all the details, but you can see clearly the number of processes, the number of initiatives, and their impact, their influence into the whole machinery has escalated since Paris. And that's exactly why we're saying that now we have to build on this. Now we have to build this experience so that this new generation is putting this not just in the voluntary process, but really at the heart of the NDCs. And that shows us how much we have progressed since then. Once again, originally the global stocktake was only supposed to be held in Dubai. We as LGMA managed to expand this to local and international level. And that's the logic that the debate at the local level should feed to the global stocktake, and vice versa. The outcomes come back. And therefore, we are committed to have stocktakes even before Dubai takes place. In that sense, we are encouraging have a focus on three main aspects. What is our own commitments? Are we doing our homework? Are our communities, our administration, staff, stakeholders, are they aware of what we are trying to achieve? Are they involved in this process, so that we really have a review of our progress, own-led process? Second is our work connected to the national level? Are they included in the NDCs, or are they receiving any benefit from the implementation of NDCs? Are we able to provide results from our implementation to the national efforts? This is the discussion, and it will change in every country and even in every city. There may be cases that some cities may be more active, whereas the others may not. Or there may be cases that really there is a huge mobilization. This is just to track where are we on that. And finally, are we literally focusing on climate justice domestically and globally? Are we able to bring urban poor? Are we bringing the benefits of a low carbon transition and a resilient transition to all elements of the society so that they can embrace and they can help our world? If we can make this discussion at the local level, we can bring the results to the Dubai. And more importantly, if we can make this agenda as a permanent, that once in a year, local government, local council, or regional parliaments discuss a global agenda, and that they literally localize the global aspirations at the community level, and then bring these results to the UN processes. And in fact, if we can make if we can prove that this demonstrates a success, we truly believe that in the new era of UN, new generation of multilateralism, we can introduce a new momentum and a new opportunity that opens the door for many, many stakeholders. We are proud in MedCop in Tangier, we have announced the first 10 list. This includes international processes, international meetings that we share our information on StockTech, but also already announced calendar of events in different parts of the world. We have seen New York City, Concord has already started to plan for their events, and Broward Country, Utrecht, Glasgow, they are also on the way to convene their process, so that we are starting to advance this. One, I want to address one interesting point. This list may be a bit small at this first stage, but let me give you one example. In 2018, when the Talanoa dialogues was kicked off in June, there were literally zero cities and regions Talanoa dialogues. But after the mobilization in June in Bonn, by the time we reached the Katowice, we had convened 60 sessions of Talanoa dialogues in 40 countries. Our hope that this stocktake process could take place at least in 100 countries, so that we can literally reach to half of the world's population. Obviously, one event in a country doesn't ensure it, but if we can make sure this diversity is even more than Talanoa, I think this will give us a huge opportunity to speak more aggressively and more confidently in Dubai. So that should be our purpose. We look forward to engagement of all cities, regions, and their networks to embrace this process. You can see testimonials from our leaders like Mayor Sefiani, who is proud that this was announced in the Mediterranean meeting. So that is the legacy of COP27, and he's inviting all his partners across the world to join that. Or Mayor Derner is also saying that this is exactly the spirit that is needed, and as the city who has already made progress on the climate emergency, they really would like to showcase that the mechanisms we built, like daring cities, can help this process. Or Susan Aitken, who has been championing the climate justice, she sees this as a wonderful opportunity, so that when they discuss climate justice at the Glasgow, they can also make this relevant to the global debates, and that we can inspire each other. A couple of words, and then this will be closing, and I will give the floor, especially after this slide, to Heloise. You are aware, presidency has announced the initial calendar of events, and they received feedbacks, and they asked for comments, and we shared in the original agenda. We were very happy the term urbanization is part of the thematic day, but we were a bit concerned because it was again too late, and we were discussing, especially if we will have a leaders summit with subnational engagement, it may be easier to connect this closer to each other. There was a number of course, opportunities or discussions. What is this? It will be very likely announced in the next couple of days. And this week, you all know that in the Islamic world, we have the Eid Mubarak, the one of the two big holidays. So we are expecting more information to come up next week. But this calendar has a revised agenda. You may notice that we have now made the cities, regions, urbanization day at the beginning of at the end of the first week. So we will start with the Climate Action Summit, which will include a subnational engagement and a local leaders summit, local action summit, in collaboration with Bloomberg. And we will conclude the week with the urbanization and ministerial, which is kickoff, the curtain raiser of the cities, regions, and urbanization day. The interesting thing is that if you notice, the first week is full of topics that are more or less hardcore climate topics, which is the one that is more contentious. climate finance, energy transition, just transition, and urbanization is one of those topics that is on the table. It is, it has a certain meaning for us, and this I think is empowering us that we are considered as one of the topics that is not easy but also is instrumental. The second week is relatively soft topics of the climate debate, especially that is introduced since COP26, which is engaging or encompassing other topics like food, nature, youth. These are equally important for us, especially hearing that we are connected to biodiversity process or food system summit. There are a lot of opportunities. This means that we will still have agenda in the second week. And that's why we will use, as usual, the multi-level action pavilion as our base. We will feed into the negotiation action agenda. We will see what will be the announcement from the local action summit. We will feed into the urbanization ministerial so that we can achieve some decisions and commitments. And in the beginning, and in both of the weeks, we also use, if possible, in the blue zone, the engagement opportunities offered by the COP28 presidency, because Dubai Expo City is a very unique space. So we can also make use of additional engagements. But we will see how we will get there, because especially financial details of this process is still not announced yet. So maybe I finish here, and then especially give the floor before going to IPCC debate to our colleagues. Hello, as you already asked this about whether this is official, I can say that it's probably not on the web yet, but this is very likely will be the latest version. But you may always expect some changes. And before Eloise, I see Clarissa is asking about the plans of LGMA for New York Climate Week. And Keshav is also asking there that how we will start for the preparations. The New York Climate Week is starting to take shape, because you all are aware these summits are under the authority of Secretary General, and depending on his priorities is shaped. In the past, 2014, it was mainly focusing on non-party stakeholders' commitments. In 2019, it was a combination of national leadership and partners. This year, it is primarily focusing on transparency and accountability, especially for non-party stakeholders. So under this space, there is already a high-level expert group, and there is already feedbacks to this expert group recommendations. So our engagement will be mainly around this process, but you all know New York City is hosting Climate Week, so that there will be numerous agendas as well. And in particular, especially with this discussion about bringing Dubai COP28 and an agreed outcome on multi-level NDC pledge or NDC pact, we will have several consultations. Therefore, stay tuned, but I think it's a bit too early. We will definitely share the upcoming agendas. And Kesha, let's remember, side event applications are just on the way. Pavilions are on the way. I think there is numerous opportunities. We will collect, of course, every network will collect their plannings, but I think we have to be we have to have some patience about the exact planning. But this calendar that we announced will give us more information or more guidance on the way forward. Eloise, would you like to take the floor? Let me finish my sharing. Yeah. Kata, can we give Eloise? Yeah.
Yes, I've just promoted her to. There we go.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Eunice, for giving us the time. So I'm Eloise from Regions 4, and I just quickly wanted to share with you the work we have been doing with the Committee of European Regions and Under 2 Coalition around drafting common messages for subnational governments for COP28 and GST outcomes. So we have developed, based on the work of LGMA, top-line joint messages and an annex with the language that can be added to negotiations text on expectations of subnational governments for COP28 negotiations. So these are top-line messages. They don't go in the detail of the negotiations, but they offer a common vision of what we could push together as LGMA. And we discussed with Yunus that this could be part of a larger package of inputs for COP from the LGMA constituency, so as to connect with messages coming out, for example, of the local stocktakes. So we would like, as a next step, to send you the draft messages by next week for your review, your input, and we are very open to suggestions because we know a lot of you are working on particular parts of the negotiations. And so we would like to have your inputs up until end of July, and then we would provide you with a final draft version for endorsement by mid of September. And this would be then a working document that we can have up until COP. So pretty much let us know if you're interested by the initiative, and obviously we will provide you with more information by next week. But we think this could help us have a common group of actors pushing together with top line messages for COP. Thank you.
Thank you, Eloise, and congratulations for this initiative. As we have agreed, we have to diversify our channels, diversify our tools, and diversify our mechanisms to strengthen our position and our engagement in the process. So we believe this is a very, very timely initiative. As we all said, one of the first time that we are seeing is that COP28 presidency is now soon launching their strategy in terms of what they would expect to achieve. And we believe this process that you kicked off and the overall LGMA engagement will give us the complementarity that these are aligned and give the confidence that we are in fact collaborating, and in fact we are truly throwing the multi-level collaboration. So which is very, very exciting, and I think this is a demonstration of our collective wisdom and achievement. As Heloise mentioned, these three organizations have already started discussing internally, but we will now also open for consultations starting from next week onwards. During the July webinar, we will be able to see and hear the content-wise and have an opportunity to discuss. And as I said, this will be presented as an input to the roadmap towards COP28. So thanks a lot, also Eloise, to other partners, Committee of the Regions, and under two coalition. And I think we can, before, let me take over the share screen mode. Eloise, if it's okay for you. I just wanted to announce our discussion on our agendas, what to expect in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, for the Northern Hemisphere, we are getting into a kind of a slow motion period, which the extreme heat is also making us a bit more lazy and even more alerted to the climate disasters. But life goes on, and we have to be clear that we are on the right track. There will be numerous submission opportunities, workshops, and sessions on the various topic and one of them, the closest one, is on loss and damage, and our working group partners are already working on that. And there will be numerous to come. There are several deadlines announced, based on the SPA 58 as well. Regional climate weeks are good news announced for September, October, which gives us time for preparations. Asia, Pacific, Middle East, and North Africa, Latin America, they're all announced. The dates are clear, and we will also use these meetings as our stepping stones, especially on the rallying for a multi-level NDC action pledge or action pact that could be officially announced at COP28. The G7 Urbanization Ministerial and the G7 Roundtable on Subnational Climate Action will be a defining moment, because there will be inputs from these processes, and they committed to connect to COP28 and G20. Meanwhile, Urban 20 Mayors Summit will also convene in July. Outside UN, a high-level political forum will take place. UN Food System Summit will take place. Because of the agenda is so much relevant, I think there will be some interesting outcomes. We said that in New York we will be active. Urban October is an opportunity, and throughout this process, Stocktake for Climate Emergence sessions is what we really recommend you to talk to your network, encourage them to schedule such dialogues, and we have the guidance document for you so that you can plan for it, and that we make sure that there is this momentum growing towards COP28. Once again, in the next couple of weeks, we're expecting more announcements from presidency and Bloomberg Philanthropies, hopefully also with a strong alignment with the LGMA constituency. Before I give the floor to Ivana for the biodiversity agenda, I just want to announce an important process going on. Obviously, IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is an intergovernmental body, which is national governments are the ones who nominate experts or approve the outcomes and work with the scientists. So we do not have a voting power. However, there is an important opportunity. We have always been appreciating the work of IPCC over these years, and we are very happy over these years. IPCC has also evolved its approach to cities. We have an action agenda. We have convened Edmonton conference. There is also climate and culture technical meetings have been taking place, and throughout this process, we have seen AR6 having more visibility to local action, urbanization, including a summary for urban policymakers. Along these lines, one of the key individuals who have make this possible is Deborah Roberts. Deborah is, for the first ever local government, let's say, based scientific expert who is leading the work of IPCC over these years. Now, she is putting herself among the candidates. We have 3 or other more. Obviously, as LGMA constituency, we will welcome whoever is elected, but according to LGMA, Deborah is one of us. Deborah is one of our members. Deborah is one of our family members. And obviously, we can definitely be, as LGMA, biased towards Deborah based on all her achievements and dedication. So we will see how this evolves, but you can definitely watch Deborah's announcement of her candidature and how she wants to lead IPCC. As we said, we don't have voting power, but we definitely could express our engagement and our support with due respect to other candidates, committing that they are all working with us as soon as the result is over. By the way, it's also not just the chair, the co-chairs and some of the vice chairs are also elected, and there will be a number of urban-based scientists like Diana Urga-Forzets, Shabakar Dokal, who are among our partners who are working with us in the Edmonton process or the urban policymakers. So we are very excited that the more we can have urbanists in the IPCC process, that will be making our lives much easier for the AR7 special report, upcoming special report on cities, and as well as this new generation of NDCs, which will be multi-levelly coordinated and having urbanization at its heart. So these are all exciting processes. Let's hear from Ivana now. How are we advancing the biodiversity agenda? Ivana, I'm stopping sharing my screen and giving the floor to you.
Thank you, Yunus. I will start to share my screen with you so you'll be able to see my slides. Are you able to see it now?
Yes,
Perfect.
all
Thank
good.
you. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending which part of the globe you are. My name is Ivana Del Rio, and I'm presenting you with biodiversity advocacy updates. So first, let me start with 2 points on the Ramsar Convention of Wetlands. There's the city wetland accreditation, which is a program that recognizes the good practices of wetland cities for their conservation and protection. And this program is administered by its independent advisory committee, which just held a meeting in the 7th of June in Amiens, France. ICLEI was represented by Laura Lowe, and it's important to note that ICLEI has co-chaired this committee for the current triennium, and we already expressed our interest to continue on this position for the next triennium. And the most important points of this meeting was that now the call for application for wetland city accreditations, this new city term, it's now open on June 1. It opened with a diplomatic note that was sent to the parties. And the advisory committee also worked on operational guidance for wetland city accreditation so that the cities could have a more concrete presentation of what they needed to in order to apply. And in this meeting, it was also discussed the consultations for the 5th strategic plan of the Ramsar Convention, which will be starting in July. As part of this program, the mayors meet on a roundtable for wetland city mayors. This was also held on June in Amiens, France, and ICLEI delivered a Cities with Nature presentation, and other discussion points included the draft for Wetland City Network strategic plan, and they also discussed importance of wetland on the education sector. And here you have a list of the cities that attended the meeting, and there are currently around 40 cities on the Wetland City Accreditation Program. Now I'm going to talk, yes, this is the next slide. So Yunus already referred to one of the resolutions on UN habitat. There was also one on biodiversity. This is a resolution adopted by biodiverse and resilient cities to mainstream biodiversity and ecosystem services in urban and territorial planning. It was submitted by Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Germany, Pakistan, Peru, Singapore, and Uruguay. It refers to several SDGs, as is SDG 6, SDG 11, but it mainly focuses on the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and it highlights Target 12 and Target 19. And it also relates to the plan of action of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities, as it also calls for collaboration between levels of government, resource mobilization for biodiversity action, and also calls for capacity building. And it's also important to note that they request the executive director to have an open-ended international expert advisory group to follow up on the implementation of this resolution, and ICLEI is already working towards to join this this group. Now I just move on to some CBD points. There was recently a meeting on Target 3. There's this global partnership to support the achievement of these conservation and protection of nature. So this was convened by the CBD in collaboration with IUCN and hosted by UNEP and the World Conservation Monitoring Center. It was held in Cambridge from the 12th to the 14th of June. ICLEI was represented by Ingrid Coetzee, and it's important also to note that there were around 50 nominations from parties and more than 100 international organizations presented their interest to attend this meeting, and the CBD selected only around 70 experts to join this meeting, and ICLEI was the only actor that represented local and subnational governments. All other participants of the meeting include parties, indigenous people and local communities, and other observers. And the main point of the meeting was just to map and agree on how it's best to collaborate between parties and other actors to reach the 30 by 30 targets. And also on the CBD, ICLEI acts as secretariat of its advisory committee on local governments and biodiversity. We held a meeting on May 30th, and some of the points that we discussed was the 7th Summit report, mobilization towards COP16, and opportunities to engage with the CBD. Here on this picture, you'd be able to see representatives from Izmir, Turkey, Los Angeles in the United States, Bonn in Germany, and there was a tour de table where all these city representatives discussed their plans to implement and contribute to the GBF and the plan of action. And lastly, just let me kindly invite you and remind you of our webinar series From Agreement to Action, the key role of subnational and local governments in the GBF. Our upcoming session, it's focused on Target 12. It's going to be on July 20, and you can find more information on CBC website and also the link to register. Thank you, Yunus.
Thanks, Ivana. Especially on the discussion about the connection between the two processes. One thing that we discussed in the morning was on the habitat resolution. It was interesting. First of all, it was very good because biodiversity is also a topic that is not a priority, and it's good that urban ministers are taking this on board, building on 15 years of work that the local and regional governments have been doing in this space. But an interesting point of the resolution was that in the original draft, there was also recognition of the 10-year action plan for subnational cities and other local authorities, which is a result of Edinburgh process that we have been joining with all the partners. However, in the final resolution, that reference is removed. I think it's not a debate. I know none of us were in the negotiation rooms, but we have to check with our partners in UN Habitat what was the reason rationale for the removal of these references, because it's already adopted by the CBD. Obviously, it is. I mean, we will still can work on it, but I think we have to address this. The second point I think is, as you have heard in the agenda, we have been discussing champion COP28 champion. Razan Al Mubarak is the president of IUCN, and in your presentations, we all know in the biodiversity space, IUCN is an important partner, also partner of the cities with nature and regions with nature. I think we have to make use of it much effectively. I am very happy during the bond discussions, we were able to talk to Razan and her teams. Kobe, especially from our Cities Biodiversity Center, was also trying to connect. So I believe, especially on the agendas on food, resilience, and nature outcomes from COP28, we should make sure they connect the presentation that you have made or other topics that we are working on, so that we can ensure the synergy and ensure the appropriate effective engagement between the two processes. And I'm confident we will advance on that, so that it is important. So thanks a lot. I'm not sure whether so we have a question from our colleague from Nameka Oru. She or he is asking whether LGMA has any plans for African Climate Week in September. Yes, it is already kicked off. There is a planning that is taking place with the champions team and the UNFCCC. The side event applications, as far as I know, is it closed? I don't know whether it is over. And we also know this time in September, African Climate will also be back to the African Leaders Summit on Climate, which is very, very important because of both the COP27 presidency, but also COP20 presidency. We know our colleagues, UCLG Africa has also discussed this. So we will stay tuned for several updates, but Nameka, we will be happy to also get your inputs or ideas so that we can coordinate. As of today, I don't think there's a clear agenda yet, but if you listen to all the discussions that we want to achieve some good outcomes, knowing in the surge there were really powerful African states endorsing, so definitely there will be a lot of opportunities to engage at the African Climate Week. So if whether there's any additional inputs from our partners, did we miss any of the questions that were raised? I think we have addressed most of it. Kata, maybe you know any points that we have not touched upon?
No, I think you touched upon the Q&A, and yeah, all good.
Excellent. If there is no additional contributions, we may declare that this session is closed, but definitely it will be a long, hot summer, but finally bringing results that we all look forward. I'm confident that we're on the right track. It's really good to see endorsements and engagement from so many actors. I think we are on the right track to make sure that starting from COP28, when we kick off the second generation of climate action, which is responding to climate emergency in its true sense, we will make sure urbanization and multi-level action will be at its heart, and all our efforts will be supporting this goal. So with that, I'd like to thank you all and wish you the best of day and week. Thank you.